Welcome, everyone, to the EnLight Life podcast. I'm your host, Alexandra Cousins, and I'm here with Zora from the world of biohacking. And she is a gerontologist and a menopause explorer and expert in the making through her own journey. And so I've been following Zora for a while, for several years actually, and I always enjoy your content, Zora. So welcome to my podcast and to this conversation around exploring, what it means. What does it mean to age healthily and to go through this period of kind of craziness, because it is, in a way that is beautiful and empowering and hopefully more easeful.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm excited to have this conversation with you. You're so easy to speak with, and your audience hopefully is interested in menopause and this whole transition, even if they're young, in the sense that they're 20s or 30s, they need to be aware. If you're a woman, or if you're living with a woman or care about a woman in your life, it's something you have to be aware of. And so it's the idea is to just be aware, and then what can you do to make this transition smooth? Because the stuff that we see online, very often TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, there are these funny, jokey videos about how horrible we will feel with the night sweats and the mood swings and depression and the low libido and the dry vagina. And like everything is just, it's scary. And I get women who are so scared that you could tell in the comments, like, I don't want to go through this. Can I get away with it? Do something else. And we can make the smooth transition. Menopause is inevitable. We're all going to go through it. We're lucky to go through it if we get to this age, but suffering is an option these days. So you can choose the way you go through this transition.
Yeah, I was going to say, so either you're scared of it or you're like me, who I watched for years, that these things were a theme. And for years, I literally was convinced that, okay, well, that's for you all. That ain't going to happen to me because I live so healthily and I do all the things already. So, and because I never had hormonal issues, I've never experienced any of that, or at least not overtly. And so it was like, great, I'm going to get away with it, until it started at 47, sort of maybe just shy of 47. And it literally hit me like a ton of bricks. And it took a while to kind of cotton on to it. And eventually I was like, oh my gosh, I think this is what's happening. And
Yeah.
I was appalled, I'm kind of like going, like, in full honesty, I was like, this is horrible. This is mean. This shouldn't be happening. It felt a little bit like when I was trying to give birth to my first child and I had planned the home birth, and I did it all like the natural way, the preparation. I was sure I was just going to pop this baby out while dancing, under the moonlight type of thing. And then 36 hours into labor, I was like, I demand a cesarean. I demand to be taken to hospital. This is beyond cruel. And, off I went to hospital, and I literally had my fights with God, and I'm like, this is fucked up.
It's not fair. Why? Why?
Yeah. I was like, you know what? I was prepared to handle certain things, but this, you took it too far. And I did
Yeah.
feel a little bit like that as I went through my, first kind of perimenopausal symptoms. And I reached out to all these experts, and, we were having this conversation before we hit record, how I was probably one of the few women, I guess also I knew where to go to. So that did help. I already, being in the circle. So I did pick, the best of the best. But I was actually appalled at the fact that all I was offered was hormones, all the hormones. And I kept thinking, but hello, do you know who you're talking to? Like, I'm someone who is very healthy, who's done all the healthy things her whole life. Surely there's got to be something else that I could be doing rather than just going on hormones, because I didn't feel ready for it. And the fact that no one even took the time to really kind of explain, other than to just say, you know what, they're safe. We've been doing this for years. Don't worry. This is what you got to do. And if you don't do it, you're going to be sorry one day when you're sitting at 70 in nappies. Like, I literally had a doctor say exactly those words to me. And I was like, this is not helpful.
That is such an unusual response, because most women who are going through menopause do not get offered hormone therapy. So your doctor is a little bit advanced, and I'm wondering if your doctor, maybe if he knows you or she knows you, maybe they'll, oh, well, she's tried everything else. She's super healthy. It's like, what's the point in telling her diet and exercise, because she's already doing it? What else do we have in our toolkit? And all they had was HRT, which for some would work, and that's fine. And for you, you said there's got to be something else. And most of the time, there isn't a whole lot. Like, you're lucky you even got that, but they won't know things that are in the sort of biohacking space that can be an option, and they're just assuming that you want to be on HRT, and this is where we see the pendulum starting to swing the other way, because before, and still is, the most women are not offered HRT. Even if they really want it, they're denied it. And then here you are on the other side, where you're thinking, oh, there's got to be something else. Like, why are you just offering this? And I always say, you can't out hormone a bad diet and lifestyle. It's great if you want it and you need it, and it helps you, but you still need to have the foundation of a healthy diet and lifestyle for
Yeah.
these things to work even more effectively. Or if you're worried about your future self too, if you're worried about, being, not everybody who's in adult diapers is because they don't have hormones. I mean, there's a lot of other things that are going on. I've met women who've had on hormones and they have osteoporosis. I've met women who are not on hormones, but they're doing all the exercise and diet and they still have osteoporosis. So it's again, finding out what works for you, but it's a pity you weren't offered the other things, but you're smart enough that you knew that there's got to be another way. But just so women know who are listening, there are other options. It doesn't have to be HRT. You don't have to be bullied into taking it or not taking it. It's your choice,
Yeah.
your body. And I always encourage women to do the homework. Don't just poo-poo hormones or poo-poo some other diet or poo-poo whatever because you don't know much about it and you just heard that they're not good or it's not good for you. Do your own research, and biohacking is all about self-experimentation. If you want to try something else, or do it. I mean, it's your choice, and that's why I love biohacking, is because it's all about the N of one experiment, because the only person that matters in this room is you.
Absolutely. And I feel this is where, I wanted to have this conversation with someone like you, where, as we said at the beginning, it's about having the conversation. It's not, I'm not here to say what I did or what I've did so far, because I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 6 months time or in 2 years time. I don't know. And if I've learned anything, it is to actually remain completely open, because we don't know until we get into the situation. We don't know what we're going to do. And I do remember, even as I was finding my way, there were definitely moments where, I would say to my husband, you know what? I don't care now. Give me all the freaking hormones. And so, I know that we can hit moments, or, lows or whatever, where we think, what we're doing is not working. It's just that because I'm stubborn, and I wanted to prove something to myself. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna stick to, what my theory is, and I want to see if it's gonna work. But on the way, there were definitely those moments where I was like, okay, I'm gonna
You
drop
have to, you have
everything.
to, yeah, you listen to your body. I just had a total hip replacement and I tried my hardest to avoid surgery. I was anti-surgery, didn't want to do it. I spent 2 years biohacking this and I didn't find the thing. I'm one of these people who believes the body can heal itself. It knows what to do. Just get out of the way. I just couldn't find the way. And it gets to a point where you say, you weigh the benefits versus the risks. And when I saw my mood go down, when I couldn't go out with my friends and I had to stay home all day, and you can't go for a walk and you can't do normal things, I was thinking, this is doing more damage to me physically inside than actually having somebody rip my bone open and shove a piece of metal in there. And I'll be much happier because I'll be on the way. And the same thing as when I had the surgery. You're in a lot of pain. And I was always like, let's minimum drugs, minimum, let's not pump the body full of toxins. But it's so painful. You just say, bring it on. I don't care. Any pill they brought me, anything. I said, give it. I no questions asked. I will detox this later because right now I'm on high alert. Cortisol is really high. I'm in a lot of pain. And there's no badge that I'm going to win because I decided not to take the painkillers. I'm just going to be probably worse off because I've suffered so much. And I think there is more damage done the body than just saying giving in. We say giving in. I hate that word giving in, but you want to stand by what you believe in, but our beliefs then sometimes change and we realize that we're better off doing something else. And that's, again, going to biohacking is not just about doing everything all natural. I mean, there's a foundation. We like to
Yeah.
do things all natural, but we also like some of the chemistry that's out there and what's available. And that's why the kind of, okay, this is biohacking, is just experimenting with a lot of stuff and coming out the other end in a better situation.
Absolutely. I like that way of thinking, and I feel more and more it's important to be able to adopt that way of thinking rather than staying. We were saying before we hit record, so many people nowadays, like the whole world is about polarizing, right? It's either black or white. You're either a raw foodist or you're a carnivore type of thing. There is no more middle ground. There is no more nuances. And if we dare, because that is what I do all the time, I bring in the nuances. And I can't believe the way that people kind of take the liberty to literally try and bash me to pieces and say things that they would never say to me in public, just
Yeah,
for
it's
having a
because
different
they don't
opinion.
get likes. Likes and clicks don't happen when you're middle ground. Likes and clicks when you stick your stake in the ground and you make a statement and you make people fear that they're doing something wrong and my way is right. And that's how you grow as an influencer. And it's not because we're in the middle going, well, it could be this, it could be that. And, it's if you want to play that game, and maybe some of these people really play that game and they really, really believe in it. But then what happens is science changes, science
Yeah.
evolves, things, don't work out. And then it's hard to backtrack with everything that you've, talked about. And there's certain things, that's why it's hard. Maybe I would be, huge if I decided to stick my stake in the ground, but it's just not who I am. It's not what I believe in. And how can you, just not me. And I think giving people a choice and saying there's this side and that side, and empower them by saying, look, this is what they're talking about. And maybe I can say what I'm doing, but it's ultimately the person who's listening to say, I'm going to, choose this way or that way, or go middle ground too. It's up to you.
Yeah, I think the education piece is really important. So I'd love to hear from your side. What do you feel women should be doing, instead of just kind of also point blank listening to their doctor? How can a woman who's out there, because there is so much fear mongering, right? In fact, now, I mean, as I say, there's fear mongering if you don't take hormones. There's fear mongering if you take them, because then there's a whole list of things that could go wrong. But there's also fear mongering if you don't take them. That's kind of the
Yeah.
new trend now. And so, what
Yeah.
can a woman do to empower herself? Because as we know, not taking hormones is not going to work for everyone. And taking hormones is also not going to work for everyone. And I've also heard women who said, it worked for me, whatever, for 3, 5 years. and then it was no longer working for me, and I came off, and I feel so much better now, but I'm happy that I went on them when I needed them. So, there's all kinds of conversations and all kinds of truths and experiences that need to be honored. And I often think, how can a woman out there who is just sort of starting on this journey, how can she find her way?
I think first we have to understand that there are no guarantees in life. There's risks to making decisions, to doing something, and there's risks to not
Yeah.
doing something. That's just life. We're not gonna we're all gonna die one day. So we have to accept that death is coming. Now, could we delay it? Can we live a better life? How can we live a better life now? So if we can accept that we'll die and it's okay, and I'm going to have to take a risk because I have to make a decision, yes or no, with whatever it is that we're doing, I think it helps make the transition easier. And then you make your decision, you read up on a thing that maybe intuitively feels right. Like, listen to your intuition, ladies. It's pretty strong. And it's really, it's, we can be swayed by all the information that we hear, but your intuition will tell you where to go, how to go, when to take that first step. So empowering yourself with information is really important. Accepting that you'll have to make a decision with something at some point, and even if it's an indecision, it's still a
Mhm.
decision, and that's okay. But try to not be bullied by someone or something you've heard because your intuition is telling you something else. So education, I think, is one of the key points, and understanding, especially when it comes to HRT. It's still evolving. We are still learning. I don't know if, today, what I say today will still be valid tomorrow or in 5 years or 10 years. It certainly
Yeah.
has changed from 20 years ago and what we all knew or thought we knew. And will it change again? Well, probably, because we don't have the robust research that we want to convince everybody and, to agree on everything. We have quite a bit, and it's giving us some clues, but ultimately it doesn't really matter what the research is. It just matters how you feel, what you do. If the research shows HRT works with hot flashes in 80% of the women or 90% of the women, and it doesn't work with you, well, you got to figure something else out. And I really am trying to be more cautious with the words that I use, because when I interview people, I pick up things as well. And very often is use the words of estrogen is protective. It'll protect your brain, or hormones will protect your heart and your breasts, your vagina, your everything. You go, oh, it'll protect me. So then you have this false sense of security that if I take these hormones, I will not get osteoporosis, or I will not, I don't need to do anything else. I don't need to change my
Yeah.
diet or my lifestyle. I'm protected. And I think that's something wrong to say. You may lower the risk possibly, but I can't say you could just let everything else go. So it's up to you to be the biohacker that you are, and listen, educate yourself, test, measure, and assess. You test something out, you measure if it works for you, and then you assess, am I going to continue with this or not continue with this? Is it working for me or not? And when you're testing and measuring, let's say a protocol or hormones or whatever it is, then you got to measure this as well. Like, test yourself after. Are you in a safe, optimal range for certain hormones? Is this going to protect your your uterus, your uterine, for example, uterus from uterine cancer? So, well, then go and get an ultrasound. Go test
Hmm.
every year to see it's protected. And if it's not, then you got to change something else. Go and take some brain scans if you want. Go and test your cholesterol levels, your thyroid, all these other things. They're important. They matter for you as you enter older age. And when we get to our 70s and 80s, it has a big influence of what we've done in our 50s and 60s. So we can't just reverse time. Sometimes things have a
Yeah.
compounding effect. So I really encourage women to be that biohacker, test, measure, and assess, know where you're going. Don't just take something, whether it's hormones or something else, saying I'm protected, everything's great, and not test everything and measure how you're progressing. It's really, really important.
Yeah, I think this is a really important point that is not made enough times. I feel the general message out there that is being sort of pounded into everyone or every woman is, you know, you got to be on the hormones, and basically that'll sort you out. It that's the message, as if it's a blanket that is going to make everything good. And the reality is, no, there is no such thing. There is no biohacking tool. There is no peptide. There is no nothing that's just going to make it all good. There is no diet for that matter, right? Like whether we're talking raw food or carnivore or something in between, nothing exists that when we do it, it gives us surety for the rest of our lives. The only surety is, well, we do something, it feels good, we test it, we test some more. And I think that's really the critical point, is this understanding that ultimately only we as individuals, as sovereign individuals, can be fully responsible for our health. And
Mm-hmm.
then we have to use the various experts, because, you know, I do think experts with you know, with a conservative view, because ultimately there is no, also there is no world expert, as I have learned, you know, in regards to hormones, because I thought I'm going to go to the best in the world. You know, he
They all have a different opinion.
and it's like, what do you mean you don't know about bioregulators? You're the best of the world, you know? It's like, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And they all may
So
have conflicting information. How many world experts I've interviewed on the podcast, and you're like, well, wait a second, that person said this and the other one said that. And like, what am I supposed to do? Because they're both world experts at what they're doing. And then maybe they don't even know the bioregulator piece or the other things. It's just,
yeah,
it's so confusing. And it's, again, this is like you said, it's our responsibility. We can't give it up just to one person to help fix us for the rest of our lives. I think doctors are fabulous. They don't know you as well as you know yourself. They can help us figure things out, but they don't live in your body. So they're going to ask you questions. So you better come prepared and know yourself. It'll help a whole lot rather than, giving just a general answer and, or I don't know. Then the doctor will be like, oh, it's just harder for them to help you. So help them help yourself.
absolutely. And so maybe, you know, share your experience with HRT, and, you know, how has that been for you? Like, has there been any negatives? Has it all been just positive?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to hear. Because yeah, I guess, you know, the one thing, or not the one thing, there's several things. I'm not so worried personally. For me, you know, I'm not so worried about like the science that says, oh, you know, it can be dangerous, and other science that says it can't be, because in that sense I trust my physical response and so forth. But what freaks me out about HRT is that, of course, not always, but oftentimes it takes a long time to find the right kind for you. So it's experimentation. You have to stick it out for 3 months. And I guess I'm scarred by, you know, at the time when I was young, and I was trying to get onto birth control, and I went onto birth control for 3 months. Those were the worst 3 months of my life. My
No.
boobs grew to the size of a porn star. Like, I'm not even kidding. These boobs that, like, you know, I'm little. So to little with porn stars boobs, that was not a good look. And I cried every single day for everything and anything. That was me for 3 months.
Oh,
So, you
oh
know, I was like,
no.
after that, I think that kind of did it for me. Um, but of course, you know, you then also hear so many women sing the praises of HRT and going like, oh my God, you know, like, I mean, whether it's, you know, the weight loss, the libido, the mood, whatever, you know, everyone has their own story. So maybe what is your story? And maybe even, because obviously you now, you know, you've been speaking to many women, you work in this arena. What is your general sort of piece of advice that you can pass on?
Well, I did the training with the Institute of Bioidentical Medicine, and this is a doctor training, and I allowed me to sit on it, and I took the exam and I went through it, and I learned a lot of what this doctor, Dr. David Rosensweet, was trying to teach other doctors about. And what I loved best about that program was that they are training the doctors to train the clients, the patients, how to self titrate, how to figure out their own optimal dosage. And
Mhm.
that's because 25% of the women who get a prescription for hormone therapy get it spot on. Like they feel great. Oh, everything's perfect. And they fall in the normal, the optimal ranges in their blood work or their urine tests. And the other 75%, not so much. So that's a big chunk of us who have to struggle to figure out how this is going to work for us and if this is going to work for us. And so the important thing is to again understand your body and know what's going on, and then you can hopefully figure these things out yourself. And it's not like, oh, just because I feel worse on hormone therapy means that it's not working for you. Well, maybe not that dosage, maybe not that delivery method, maybe not. Maybe you need to cycle things in or out. It's such a hard thing to do for sometimes. And I can now understand why doctors do not even want to get into this space. Who wants to deal with a woman and help her figure this all out? It's not easy. And then she's coming
Yeah.
back to you all the time and complaining, and then you have to pay more money to get more training, more time for more training. It's so much easier just to give her an antidepressant or give her what what you studied in medical school or what you've experienced in your clinic for the last 10 or 20 years. So I understand why doctors don't want to even get involved with this, but they have to at some point, because 50% of the population and a little bit more are going to go through menopause. So I think to answer your question, and how part of it with question was what was my experience, and the other part was what can we do to empower women, I guess, through this transition. So my own experience, like you, I was like, I'm gonna biohack my way out of this. Like, this is not me. I'm healthy and and all that. So, but in retrospect now, knowing what I know about hormones, I was having perimenopausal symptoms in my mid 30s. And I didn't know it, because in your mid 30s is when we have a steep decline of our progesterone levels. That's one of the hormones that are main sex hormones. There's estrogens and there's progesterone, and estrogen takes a steep decline in your mid 30s, and that's when estrogen is your calm and relax hormone, the chill out hormone, and when you lose it, you are becoming a little bit more agitated, more anxious, more worried, maybe depressed, and a lot of other symptoms that you can have from progesterone deficiency. And I thought, well, I just didn't know why. I was crying out of nowhere for some reason, just like, I don't know why, very weepy. And then it just passed. And then you think, oh, well, I guess that was a hormonal imbalance, which it was. And so there's a lot of instances in my life that I saw in retrospect, nothing super dramatic, but noticed just a bit more moody, a bit less patience. And maybe some people would say that's a good thing. You're just maybe standing up for yourself a bit more when you didn't. It's like it depends on how you look at things and your perspective. But now I know that was perimenopause, and I'm 54 and I'm still in perimenopause, and my periods are just starting to get wonky. I mean, I had this major surgery and I didn't ovulate, or I didn't have a period that month, and probably could have been the operation, because it's a trauma to the body, not a time to make babies. And partially it could be perimenopause. So I'm not really sure, but I started on hormone therapy when I was about 50. And I was learning about it. I was like, ooh, this sounds protective. I better get on it. And I couldn't find a doctor in the beginning who would give me hormone therapy. My mother died of breast cancer. And so I'm very concerned. And I said, if it's better, I'm not on it. I don't want it. If it's better, I'm on it. I want it. Whatever it is, just let's do it. And so I got very baby doses, very small dosages, not understanding. And I first started with progesterone and then eventually added in some estradiol and eventually estriol. It just slowly, by the time it's only probably in the last year or two that I've been on a normal dosage of hormones. And I was only, and I, because I was mostly asymptomatic, or at least not aware of the outward typical symptoms, because there's 103 symptoms of menopause that we don't even really know about. And so who knows, but the typical symptoms I wasn't really having. And until about a year or so ago, I started to get hot at night. And I thought, well, I always get hot the week before my period. So we didn't pay much attention to it until it was happening outside of the week of my period. And I thought, oh, this is probably, it's not quite a full on head hot flash, but you're kicking off the sheets at night, let's say. That's a sign of estrogen deficiency. And that's when I started to increase my dosages of estradiol, and then they went away. And I'm really happy. But I'm so far, and again, I'm still in perimenopause, not experiencing the intense symptoms of menopause. And doesn't mean that it's not going to come, but the hormone therapy may offset some of that. Of course, healthy diet and lifestyle may help with that. And I think it's always just sort of a combination of things, because I've met plenty of women who are perfect diet, perfect lifestyle, and they still have the bus hit them. And it's nothing to do that you did something wrong. It's just when the hormones are gone, they're gone. And how do you replenish them? Well, there are many ways. It's not just hormone therapy, or get them in balance as well. So balancing out the hormones is another key thing. And that's why when you get post menopause, and then your hormones are shot, they're gone, but perhaps what's left is a little bit more in balance. The body becomes used to that. Those receptors start to shut down, and then you don't feel as bad. So that's my story. And it's an ongoing experiment right now, and so it may change tomorrow. But so far, I'm pretty sure I got my dosages right, because I'm feeling good, and I'm always testing to see I'm in some optimal ranges for my future self as well, not just feeling better. And by the way, to make a point, I have been on these hormones since 50, and just last year at 53, I found out that I had osteopenia. I'm like, how is this even possible? I got a great healthy diet. I haven't been able to do impact exercises. That all went away for the last 2 years. So perhaps that had a big influence. And I have been on baby dosages of hormones. So maybe for me and my genetics and where I am, that's a double whammy. Whereas maybe for you or someone else who's listening, you'd be perfectly fine because you've checked your bones, everything's good. And then who's to say that the DEXA scan I did is accurate? Because there's another great machine out there called the REMS scan that shows not only bone density, but bone strength. And as I've understood, and I haven't confirmed this, but this is from a podcast guest that I had, he said that the DEXA scan could be 30 to 40% discrepancy. And that's why if you are going to do a DEXA scan, you got to do it at the same time, at the same place, the same conditions, and all that, because you could get completely different results try doing it on a different day without the same conditions. So who
That,
knows?
that's,
Who
yeah,
knows?
I've heard that as well. And, the reality is we've all seen false positives and false negatives in many tests, right? So just as I've had clients who came to me, swearing they've done all the testing and showing me the testing that they've got no parasites, no gut issues, and then we do some work together and, off come all the flukes from the liver. So, unfortunately testing is good. And I do feel that's also why we need to do it on a regular basis and, sometimes kind of double check. So I'm kind of interested, because well, my understanding of gerontology is that gerontology sort of for the main part, and maybe I'm completely wrong here, but it comes sort of out of the Russian medicine, Russian health system. Is that anywhere accurate?
No, it doesn't. As far as I understood, everything that I learned, no, not necessarily. It's gerontology is the study of aging and longevity. There is a famous gerontology institute in, well, because I was going to say Leningrad. Shows you my age, in St. Petersburg, but it started when it was in Leningrad. It was
Right.
called Leningrad, and so they've done a lot of research, and they're very well known for that. But the study of aging and longevity doesn't stem from Russia. At least that's not what I've learned in my gerontology studies. And again, every country has their own gerontological institutes, and still trying to learn what is aging, why do we get certain diseases. We have a concentration on older adults. We do focus a lot on advocating for them and try to figure out what's happening to them in older age, but we look at the whole life course from birth until death. So we're not just studying older adults, we're studying what adverse childhood experiences and how does that affect a certain disease that comes along when you're 50 or 60. And so this is a whole study through the life course from birth to death, and it's not just only focused on older adults. So it's fascinating. I think everybody should know the word gerontology. Most people don't, but it affects you because one day, if you're lucky, you will get old.
Absolutely. So that is where I somehow I fell upon the information of the Institute of Gerontology in St. Petersburg, so that same institute. And when I found the information on peptide bioregulators, it blew my mind because I was coming from sort of the more holistic, what's called natural hygiene understanding, which is very much all about detoxification and fasting and so forth. And so more the naturopathy way of looking at health. And from that understanding, I already had this knowledge around, we need to look after the endocrine health. And of course, in naturopathy and so forth, we do it more with herbs. We don't really, I mean, we do work with some glandulars, but it's very herb heavy. And I had come to, this experience with myself and with my clients where it's like, okay, herbs are great, but they only get you so far. And so when I found the Institute of Gerontology and the studies on peptide bioregulators, that is what completely blew my mind because it was like, oh my gosh, here these people are talking the same language. They're making everything about the health of the endocrine system. And in Russia and in the meantime in Germany and in other kind of sort of more progressive countries, they're using the peptide bioregulators in many cases as a first uh, point of intervention for women undergoing perimenopause and menopause. And the peptides that are used, both capsules or injectables, are the ones for the pineal gland. So the restoration of the pineal gland, which indirectly affects the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland because of the cascading effects. Then, of course, also on the ovaries, sometimes capsules for the ovaries are used as well, or I would say in most cases. And that just, I remember like that was just like, a huge aha moment. And I started, immediately on the peptide bioregulators and literally within 6 weeks. And I always had a feeling throughout my life, just these intuitive hits that we get as women. I always felt like my hypothalamus is not working properly. I just had this feeling. And when I then went onto the bioregulators, it was literally like someone just flipped the light switch on. And I just remember, bobbing around happily in the oceans of Bali, the warm ocean of Bali, and going like, Professor Cavinson, I love you. Thank you. Thank you. Like I was just like, oh my gosh, this man is my hero because of the repercussions that it had, like literally everything. I mean, my mood, my metabolism, my sleep. And I could then recognize that, okay, this was my missing piece that I had been trying to address with the herbs, etc. And it just never really fell into place. So that was my kind of, falling in love with gerontology and specifically the institute in St. Petersburg, and then kind of, connecting with other people on the journey.
Yeah, no, the peptide bioregulators I've heard from some people in my community in terms of it's like ovarian rejuvenation. You really are helping your body create the hormones again. It's like jump starting it. I
Yeah.
think after a certain point, once we hit post menopause, and if you once they're gone, they're gone. I think it would be hard. I haven't heard anyone yet who's post menopause, doesn't have a period anymore, and then is able to test, let's say, test their estradiol and progesterone and say, oh, wow, they're coming back. Now, ovarian rejuvenation with, say, stem cell therapy, yes, actually, I've heard of cases that you can actually get your hormones back, get a period back. And this is not the same period like when you take hormone therapy, because it's your own estrogen and testosterone and progesterone kicking in again, to the point where there's some women who want to get pregnant at 60, and we'll see if that happens. But I just did a great interview with Zach Vacaris all on this,
I
and
saw it.
he's it's crazy. Yeah, I mean
It is.
it's amazing. So we have options, like, can do that. So if you don't want HRT, well, there's a whole lot of this stuff, and here you are yourself with your own story that it can be done. And the great thing about peptide bioregulators, it's like a food supplement. It's just like nano
Yeah.
steaks, you just mini, all crushed up. It's not like, I mean, there you do have injectables, but if we're going to talk about bioregular oral, like, there's the worst thing that can happen that I've heard so far. Again, anything can happen. There'll always be a first, but and in my experience is that they don't work. I mean, okay, you lost your money, but it's nothing. Yeah, it's for most people. Why not try it? Why not? And
Absolutely.
it's one of
Yeah.
those
I
things.
mean,
Yeah.
so far, it's been now, I think, sort of, yeah, like around 4 years of working with them myself, but also working with clients with them. And I have not yet had anyone that said, oh, it did nothing for me. So for some
Hmm.
people, maybe it was, for most people, it was fairly dramatic, like to the point, and not immediately, right? I mean, it's a little bit like also, because just then, sort of in the last year, I started doing the injectable peptides and some bioregulators. And, same thing. I mean, CJC and ipamorelin, it took a while for me to really feel the effects. I would say sort of, the first month, it was kind of like, when is it happening? I was waiting for this, big thing to happen. And then probably like by month 2, and then certainly by month 3 was like, oh, wow, okay, it's happening. I can feel it in many different areas and so forth. So I think for some people, sometimes it's a little bit slower. For some people, it's faster, but definitely, yeah. And actually, we had a woman who was, well, she thought she was in early perimenopause because she hadn't had a period in 9 months. I think she was 47, maybe 47. And she then started her period again after 9 months of nothingness, and she's still going, and it's just kind of all come back. So of course, these are anecdotal, and in fact, just in under a week's time, we're in a week's time now. I'm gonna be meeting, because there's a world, one of the first congresses in Bali for anti-aging held in Bali itself. And Professor Lawrence, I don't know if you know Professor Bill Lawrence,
Bill
of
Laurent?
course. Yes.
Yeah.
So he's gonna be here, and of course a whole bunch of other sort of longevity, anti-aging experts. So, and I'm sure actually some of the ones from the Institute of Gerontology. So I'm excited to meet some of these people and hopefully have some interviews.
Oh, that'll be great. What a great conference. And it's these people too have a lot of experience, the clinical experience that maybe you and I just, that we maybe only have 4 years, but these people have many, many more years. So it's so interesting to hear their stories and what they're seeing, and what changes they can make. And they're constantly evolving too. They may be coming up with some new things. And a question for you about the bioregulators. Oh, great. My battery's going down. Hold on a second. Okay, somebody unplugged my battery. Hang on. So I when I started taking the ovarian bioregulators, the first I think they had the ovarian one, and then I was taking the blood vessel one, and maybe it was the
Yeah,
pineal one. But then they came out with one that had all three in one capsule. And so I was like, oh, it's cheaper, it's fewer pills. I'm going to take it. Let's try this. But the way I understood was that this was actually Professor Hobbinson's wife who mentioned this, that they are, all the ingredients are there, but it's less potent. So maybe if you were one who wanted to go slower, didn't want to spend as much money, you can expect results probably in a little bit longer than it's already long enough. Like, because this is not, quote unquote natural. These are not. It's not a medicine that's just immediately going to kick right in. It takes time. It's like anything that's natural. The way I understand is that when you take them orally, the peptide bioregulators, they are longer lasting but slower acting. And then
yeah,
the injectable, more synthetic stuff is faster acting, but not lasting as long. And this is what I remember, but maybe you know more
yeah.
about this
No,
than me.
that's exactly how they work. So oftentimes when there's sort of more urgent cases, then we work with the injectables right away because they work faster, or even the actual synthetic capsules definitely work faster than the natural capsules. So, one can play around a little bit. And then they also have the liquid, sort of for kids and elderly. They've got liquid ones, which are botanical, which actually also work fantastically well. So, there's a lot of options. And of course, the natural peptide bioregulators, they do tend to get a little bit expensive for sure, but one can play around with the botanicals, and then kind of, especially once I find, once you get sort of peptide saturation up to a good level. I mean, I now, the first year I took them kind of basically every month, and then now I'm only taking them maybe once every 3 months, and I don't feel any lessening at all. So
Yeah.
clearly, but I know that Professor Bill Lawrence, he's been taking them, I think, for 15 or 20 years now. And I mean, his story, of course, it's a phenomenal story, because he got into them because really no one in his lineage had outlived, I think, the age of sort of 60, and he's now 78 and in great health and in great shape. And so I love his story, because as far as I know, he's not otherwise a biohacker. So he kind of like, he's pretty, streamlined. He does his peptide bioregulators and his exercise, and he eats well, but he doesn't do a gazillion things. So I'm looking forward to hearing, more about that.
Have you ever tried Epidolon, the sublingual spray peptide?
Yes, I've tried that as well, and I'm about to get some of the what is it? The injectable, uh, not Epitalon. Yes, Epitalon, the injectable.
And the injectable. So did you have any results with the sublingual one? What did you feel?
Um, like, actually, that's the only time that I almost felt like a little overstimulation, but maybe because I had just done several cycles of the endolutin, and I had done a couple of cycles with Epitide as well. So I was kind of, at first I was doing 1 month Epitide, 1 month endolutin, and then I got the Epitalon spray, and I did feel like just that slight overstimulation, and I kind of pulled back, and I was like, oh, maybe the spray is not for me. So that's kind of,
Yeah, that's interesting. I hear mostly really positive things about sleep with Epidolon, and myself included. When I was taking them, I thought, wow, I could see and feel the difference. Which many things I try, I don't feel anything
Mhm.
really. And that one, it was kind of like magnesium, where you feel like, oh wow, I get a good sleep. But I also saw it in my scores as well, and I like the idea that it's not another pill to swallow. You just spray it under your tongue. Very simple, very
Yeah.
easy. And when people are looking for sleep hacks and they've kind of tried it all, that's one thing I like to throw out and say, well, try this and see how it goes for you. But I think on the bottle it says you take one spray in the morning and one spray in the evening, no, afternoon. They don't want you to take it after a certain hour because that could
Mhm.
be overstimulating.
Yeah.
That being said, me included, there are people who take it just before bed, and we feel great. So it's like kind of like a red light therapy. Sometimes people find it stimulating, other people find it makes them sleepy. So it's, again, your own experiment and see what works. But wonder, if did you take it late at night, or do you not? Did
No,
you
I'm
that
pretty
have
sure I
anything to do
took
with
it
it?
yeah, I took it in the morning, and yeah, definitely not at night. But my sense was just like, okay, I had just done, several cycles, and definitely my sleep had improved a lot. Like I didn't think that I had sleep issues, but once I took endolutin, it was like, wow, like this, it felt like I had the sleep back of of not quite a teenager, but well, a child, where you wake up in the
Yeah.
morning and it's like, it's a new day. How wonderful! Kind of, I'm so rested, and that was a new feeling.
You know
Uh,
who just told me that same thing 2 days ago? My daughter, and she's 24. And I'm like, what do you mean you are 24? Like, why? And she said exactly like you. Like, my sleep is good. It's fine. She goes, but I gave her, what did I give her? Sleep Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. Have you tried
I
one of those?
love
Like
that
a
one. I love that
And
one.
I was like, just try it, and she did. And she was like, so the same thing, like, it's not that I have bad sleep. It's just I felt like really deep sleep and then wake up feeling really refreshed.
Yeah.
So, and then I tried it on my 26-year-old son, and he said the same thing. So I was like, ooh, wow, this even works on 24-year-olds who don't have sleep issues. So there are some really cool things out there. And again, there are people who I've recommended this to, and nothing.
Mhm.
Um, you never know. You never know. But most people do like the whole magnesium breakthrough. The Bioptimizer stuff is pretty good.
It is. It is. Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite kind of, like let's start with that. And then if that doesn't work, we kind of, go to the bigger guns. I also found, I mean, simply because, of course, I'm a real, it's not even so much biohacker. I'm a tinker. I think more than a biohacker, I love to tinker.
Biotinker.
Yes, I'm a biotinker for sure. Little, kind of like Miss Alchemist, always brewing something. And I've always been that way, always tried and experimented. And so for a while, I went all purist. And then I was like, okay, I've done the purist thing. I know what it feels like. And it felt great. And then, I'm not here for the purist, I'm here to experiment. And so recently, I've also been doing experimentations with ultra low dose naltrexone. So not low
Ah,
dose,
yeah.
but the ultra low dose, which is basically, so the low dose is 1 milligram. The ultra low dose is, I think, 0.01. I mean, it's a tiny, tiny dose.
Yeah.
And that also, for me, I mean, I'm trying to think, am I very sensitive? Yeah, kind of medium. But that just boosted my mood like nothing else. I mean, that tiny dose, and I take it in
Wow.
the morning because I noticed that if I take it in the evening, doesn't work for me. Just like ipamorelin, everyone says take it before night at nighttime. Doesn't work for me at nighttime. I take it in the morning, and I have great energy the rest of the day. So it doesn't make me sleepy. And then at night I sleep like a stone. With all, I mean, by now, because I've learned at our age, sleep is the most sacred thing, right? I mean, I used to
Yes.
never think of sleep being, a big thing, also because it just never was an issue. And now knowing how good you feel for the rest of the day, in fact, the rest of the week when you have, these amazing nights of sleep. So my other hack is definitely, it's that tiny spray of the ultra low dose naltrexone, and I like it in a spray because it bypasses the liver, so it doesn't build up any tolerance. And so you can just always stay at the same low dose, and it definitely works like a bomb. So that's another
I have to
little.
try it. I haven't tried that yet. That's one of the, another thing on my bucket list. There's so many things out there, and I think it's really fun to experiment and try different things. And then there comes a point where I'm like, I am so tired of injecting myself. I'm so tired of taking 50 billion supplements. And I just let it all go. I just say
Yes,
enough. And then you sort of
absolutely.
reboot, reset, and then sometimes you see, oh, actually that thing was working for me because you go back on it and you're like, okay. So I think it's good to just rise and fall with these kinds of things.
Yeah,
It's fun to do it, but sometimes it's fun to just, you know, let it all go.
100%. And I'm, again, because I feel my whole thing is about, having been an extremist, my whole new thing that I'm learning, and kind of getting off on, is the middle road. So I'm very watchful of my own tendencies to want to be extreme. And so, I'm cultivating this. Okay, how can we just be in the middle road? Of course, my little tinker needs to be satisfied. So, she needs to play. But
Your
then,
biotinker.
yeah, but
I
the
love that.
wise woman that wants to be like well measured, she also needs to be satisfied. So yes, sometimes I just drop all the things and then I kind of wait. But to me, that is the beauty of, this whole experience, this whole, biohacking, tinkering, learning through our own experience from our own body, being unbiased. And I think that's really, to me, the biggest also gift of getting older and hopefully wiser, and going, what, I'm going to drop all biases, and I'm simply going to be here open to learning and figuring out, because ultimately, what is the thing, how happy am I week by week, day by day, right? Like, how well am I living? And that's where I think when something becomes too stressful, like you said, you're too, sometimes you couldn't be bothered with the injections or whatever, it's like, then it's not worth doing. Like, if it's stressing you, drop it. And then just really work with the things that are working and that ultimately are giving you the quality of life where you feel, wow, like I'm always after that, wow, I'm so happy to be alive in a body.
Yeah, that's the best feeling. It's just, yeah, to have that joy every day, if you can, even if it's just for a moment, it's such a great feeling. So if we can have more good days than bad, then we're doing okay.
Absolutely. Well, I love this conversation, Zora, and I love, that you're just so open and, explorative. And my wish for women listening to this, is to at least have been infected with the courage to experiment, to learn for themselves, and to not take anyone's word, but their own experience, and to know that it is possible at any age to still change your body, to get your body back, to get your joy, your mojo, and all the things back. And personally, I'm feeling as if, and I think your testimony of that too, that as we get older, we're actually getting better. I definitely feel
And
I'm
yeah,
getting better,
yeah. And
stronger.
stronger.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. My first 40 years in a body were not fun. They just definitely were not. And so I feel like I'm catching, I'm kind of reclaiming the years that weren't so great, and I'm making the rest of my life, which, God willing, is going to still be a long time, and to just make it as enjoyable and wonderful as possible. So I thank you for joining me in this conversation. And yeah, to the listeners, keep your mind open. Keep your mind open and be aware where you might be closing yourself off to anything at this point, right? Because we live in this amazing reality now where we have everything available to our fingertips. That to me is exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm there with you 100%. I think menopause should be the best years of your life, and you can make
Yes,
it that way if you choose.
absolutely. And so, where can listeners follow you, Zora? Because you've got also a lot going on. You've got your own podcast.
Yeah, I've got a lot going on. You can find everything on the website, hackmyage.com. All my social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, it's all Hack My Age. And I have a group, a membership group, if anybody's interested in joining my group and journey through menopause and biohacking. It's called Biohacking Menopause. And we have a wonderful group of women there. We also have guest experts coming on every week. I invite all my guests. So if you listen to the Hack My Age podcast, you like the guests, jump in the group and you'll meet them and you'll ask your own questions, not just me and the mic. And it's really fun. It's really wonderful to meet new women there. So all of that you can find on the hackmyage.com website.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Zora. I'm sure that we will have other conversations here. And thank you to the listeners. Sending you all my love. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.